Thank you. Actually, if I can start with a little shout to Venturous Council as well, my experience. So as I was sort of standing over there, I was kind of calculating how much we've paid you guys in fees over the last 9 years. And I think it's well over $1 million across hundreds of deals. So at our fund, we actually, by default, exclusively try to work with Venturous whenever there is no conflict, which is most cases. But sometimes the founders already found you before we could reach out to you, and you're like, no, we can't do it. And the reason why we keep coming back over and over again is after having worked with many dozens of lawyers as a founder, as well as a funder now, it's rare to get a lawyer who, when you are looking at a deal and you have a bunch of questions, either Michael or Eugene or Arvind will come back saying like, look, you don't need to worry about these things. Here are the only few things that actually matter, right? Because they're trying, and like, I'm not going to like waste your fees or waste your money on these kind of useless problems. Let's just focus on these things and then just get the thing done. So when you're talking to the Venturous team, one thing you're going to notice is just like, they're going to chat with you like a reasonable friend. You know, they're not going to try to play off of like the base case of like, well, you know, there's this contingency on like Article 57 in case of a fire or something like that. And no, it's like none of that. So I always just love the realness of this team. Arvinda has been my friend for almost 20 years, even before the Venturous project began. Michael is a very serious metal musician with an awesome family. So like, there's just really good personalities, just good human beings on that side. So I just want to say in public and on recording that it's always been such a great partnership. You are our very first partners at Hustle Fund, and I think we'll hold hands to the grave when we're 99 years old.
I'm in.
Yeah, no, Arvinda did say yes though, but it's okay. Anyway, just want to say,
just
that.
minivan bros.
Let's go.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
Well, okay, so I know people want to talk about like VC stuff, but I want to do just a little bit of biography first because Arvind has known you forever, but I've only known you for like a few years, and so I did a little digging this year, this year, to start. Exactly.
It's been a long year, guys. It's been
this
a long
week,
year
I
already.
meant it felt like a year, and so you're from Detroit, and you planned on being a writer and a lawyer. So walk me through how you end up in Silicon Valley and being a VC.
Thank goodness I didn't end up becoming a lawyer.
Oh,
right?
no, that would be terrible.
Yeah, I'll be on this side. I'm Korean American. So fun fact, I have one famous uncle. His name is Ban Ki-moon. He's a former UN Secretary General.
The whole audience was like,
the Koreans were like, yeah. And then the non-Koreans were like, what? So, but that's the only famous Bahn. Like, by the way, you can recognize a Bahn on the street. It's a very small family line. So if it's a Korean person, the men have gorgeous square heads. It's a distinct Bahn feature, right? So my son has carried on the tradition as well. So yeah, my parents were from Korea. They immigrated in, I think, the late 60s. And actually spent a good amount of time. Like the only reason they picked Detroit was because my mom had a sister who was living there, and that's the only reason. And actually, Detroit in the '60s wasn't so bad. It was kind of like a little bit off its Silicon Valley-esque peak as like the auto innovator, and then shit got real by the time I came out in 1981. But I was born and raised on the west side of Detroit, and it was a little bit rough, but I don't know. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was a good, rigorous, gritty experience for the world.
I realize we both grew up in the Rust Belt in 1981.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, baby.
Yeah. That's why we're what we look
Minivan
like today.
Bros.
Yeah, with punk rock shirts and cool beards. Yeah. Sorry, was there more to this question?
I mean, just the general trajectory. You started out with one plan. You ended up doing something way more
what drew
interesting.
you into VC?
Oh,
What
yeah.
was it?
Sorry, I keep forgetting. Okay. Fast forward. So, go to college here in California. That's how I made my way to the Bay Area. And, originally it was right. I loved writing. I love reading. Reading and writing is still something I really enjoy. And I thought, what are the careers for that? So I was like, law is a pretty good one for there's really good writers and readers in law. And that's kind of the safe path that Korean parents say is like, if you're too dumb to be a doctor, then like lawyers are acceptable, I guess. I can like tell my church friends
Third
that my
place.
son's a
So
lawyer, right? So I was like, all right, let's check that out. And then, there's something that's really magical about Silicon Valley. Who here, by the way, is not from the Bay Area. Not from the Bay Area. Okay. I know some of you actually are coming in sort of fresh from elsewhere, like Seoul and things like that. You know, there is something in the water here in living in the Bay Area that just infuses you with this belief that I can do this too. I can contribute. I can actually start a tech company, or I can at least be a part of like this tech scene and start to innovate. And as I was just, sitting in my dorm room over 4 years, I just got more and more bought into this idea that like, even though I'm not technical, even though I studied sociology, just like Pian over there, we're talking about that, like maybe there's a place for me here. And then after college, I was able to get a product management job. And then after that, I went down a series of starting companies. I built 4 companies, and Hustle Fund's my 5th one. But after building, I got a little bit tired. I still wanted to be a part of Silicon Valley, and venture capital was kind of a nice industry for people who want to control their time a little bit more, but still be kind of, in it, but, not really. So, was able to reconnect with some of my college friends, Elizabeth and Sheehan, whom I met actually in the first week of college, along with my wife, whom I met in my first week of college. And then we started Hustle Fund in 2017 to focus on early stage investing. So it was not planned. I didn't become a lawyer. I definitely didn't become a doctor. And but sort of just I kind of rode the wave of like what was happening in Silicon Valley, and I found that there was a place.
How do your parents feel about your choices?
Now, great, but
how long did it take?
Well, it's interesting because I have an older sister, Jeanette. She's amazing, and she's 6 years older than me, and she was definitely the good Korean daughter-ish. So she actually did get into medical school, but she left because she hated it, and then she joined Google in like 1999 or something like that. So like now she's like, oh my gosh, Jeanette is like the best daughter in the world, right? So, but like she got the pressure being the first child, actually, even though I'm the only son in Korea, that's a big deal. So like she got the pressure of like, you got to perform, you're the older one. And then I was kind of just like I'm just going to do my own thing, walk around the streets of Detroit, go to a bunch of punk shows back in the 90s and things like that, pointing at you, not Arvinda. And then
Arvinda would have gone to punk shows.
Yeah.
I got a feeling your parents were not letting you go to punk shows.
I know Arvinda's story too. So for sure, these two. And they're just like, whatever, he'll figure it out. So they took it way easier on me. And then, so not as much pressure for that kind of stuff. I think like they were really cool the whole way.
I was mostly just trying to tease you a little bit. I actually want to skip forward to the question.
Do the VC stuff.
That we're all, I think everybody came here to understand, how do VCs think about companies? So I'm flipping.
I got one.
Michael,
I'm going to go. Because I want let's just the first 5 minutes, like you just met this founder. They've just walked in. They've just started what's going in through your mind, and like what are the pitfalls they can do like right off the bat, or what are the things they can do right immediately that like at least set a tone where you're more open?
Okay,
I'm also gonna ask this question not just for you, but for other VCs in your sphere. Like what is, if you can also answer sort of more generally, because Hustle Fund's awesome and like they'll give people a chance, but let's give people advice for the other 99%.
I think I'll orient by saying like not all VCs are the same, especially if you break it out into things like stage. So if you're pitching, let's say, a Series D fund or something like Thrive Capital or something, it's a very straightforward pitch. The question that you're asking the VC is like, do you like money? And if the answer is yes, it's like, good. Here's the evidence. I'm going to make you a shit ton of money. Right? It's like, okay, like these two come in at Series D or E or whatever, and it's like, show me your last 5 years of 5-year trailing EBITDA, LTV to CAC ratio data. Like you can run almost like a banking exercise and say like, we should underwrite this because the data says it's a perfect deal. So in some ways, it's really straightforward. It's just like, do you even need to talk to people? I think you could just probably hand them a spreadsheet. Now at the early stage, this is something that, who here is coming from Asia in particular? Yeah? Okay, a lot of you. I knew that's the case. We're here at the Korea Startup Center for a reason, right? So this is something I think that a lot of Asian founders at the early stage start to miss, is that in the early stages in Silicon Valley for a lot of funders like me, a lot of this is emotion more so than data. right? It's just like, if you try to look for data, there is none. It's like, oh, Aravinda and Michael quit their job like a month ago, right? And they have vibe coded a product. It's got like 1,000 users or something, or 10 users, whatever. And I just need to believe in them, right? So what we're looking for in those first couple minutes is like, help me connect the dots as to why you are a missionary founder versus a mercenary founder. I think it might be worthwhile to define what each one is. Let's start with like mercenary. Mercenary is like, I'm in it only for money. I don't care. Like, don't get me wrong. If you're going to start a company, I want you to make an insane amount of money, right? That should be an outcome for your effort. But the problem with mercenary founders is they generally have no conviction around what they're building. If it's like Web3 is hot now, they'll do that. If it's AI is hot now, it's great. If prediction marketplaces are hot, they'll just keep pivoting and pivoting and pivoting. I've backed a couple mercenary founders, and it sucks because they just keep on moving from what's hot to what's hot, what's hot. A missionary founder generally likes to tie like a lived experience, a personal journey as to why they're building this company. I'll give you a small example of this. Like, there's a company that we have in our portfolio called Uncommon Therapeutics. And what this guy is doing is trying to create AI models to create cures or treatments for people with rare diseases. Like 10,000 people in the world have it. And when I asked him, why do you do this? He says, my daughter has one of these rare conditions where only 10,000 children have it. But did you know she's in the top 0.1% in terms of like quality of life through these things? So why I fell in love with this founder, it was just like, how can you bet against this guy? Because what's at stake is not actually making a lot of money. It's actually saving his daughter's life. And in the course of doing that, saving many other kids' lives who are facing rare diseases that no pharmaceutical company wants to touch because there's no money in solving rare diseases with that much kind of budget, but he's finding a way of doing it. So those kinds of stories are really great. A critique of a lot of Korean founders, I'm not pointing at anyone in particular in this room, just pointing, just going like this, is that like, so many Korean founders approach me with a bunch of logic. It's just like, I am going to solve rare diseases, and here is the model, the spreadsheet for my next 10 years of revenue, and here's when we exit in year 7 or something from like Pfizer or whatever. But they don't really spend the time talking about like, why does this problem actually matter to you? So those who actually can sort of introduce, I think, the emotion, the lived journey, why this is like a mission that they cannot give up, I think tend to do a lot better in fundraising, not just with Hustle Fund, but with early stage venture capitalists in general.
Thank you. I think that was really helpful. What is, other than being a mercenary, what is something where when the founder talks to you and they give you some signals, you have hesitations?
Arrogance is a big one. So sometimes you can ask a simple question of just like, what's keeping you up at night? What's the thing that you believe is gonna perhaps make your company fail? And on occasion, like 1 out of 50 people I talk to will be like, absolutely nothing.
Sleep like a baby.
Yeah, we are destined to become a unicorn, blah, 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 when, right? I'm like, okay. And then it's a huge turnoff because like, I think if you're self-aware as an individual, you always know that there's something that can hurt you. Even if you're the best founder in the world, like maybe there's a global pandemic. Maybe there is a surprise diversionary war someplace in the world that affects supply chains. Like things just happen that can deeply disrupt your life, right? So I love when founders actually tell me, like, I have no idea how to answer that question, or I don't know right now, right? But they're intellectually honest about it. And maybe it can give me some sense of like, here's how I think I'm going to figure it out over time. That's fine. Like when you're pitching at the early stages, there's always a good reason to say no because there's serious problems with every company at the early stage. But those who are self-aware to say like, here are the gaps and here's where I'm working on to fill those gaps, they tend to be really lovely. So if I'm going to live with this founder for the next 10 years, which is longer than a lot of marriages, like I kind of want to feel the desire to grow old with that person, which is why I didn't marry that other arrogant girlfriend that I had before my wife, right? It was just like, why would I spend my life with you? And then I got my wife, whom you're best friends with now. So yeah, there you go.
He's pretty awesome, guys. Just FYI.
They were on a weekend trip just 2 weeks ago, so she knows all the shit.
That's kind of, I love that answer, and that's more focused on like the founder's personality and what they're bringing as a founder individually. I wonder if there's like structural red flags, if that's the word, and also like kind of a self-serving follow-up to that is like, how much does legal factor in? Like is it ever a situation where it's like you're like, oh my God, this is a mess, or legal hasn't been sufficiently involved, it's hyper regulatory, I can't get into this, or do you view structural issues like that as like inherently resolvable, and it's really about the mission and the founder?
That's a really nuanced question there. So sometimes hairy legally challenged companies are the most exciting, right? Like let's say that you're building a company in a space that hasn't been quite regulated yet, right? We don't do prediction marketplaces, but I find them very interesting. Generally, I'm a little bit negative on them, but like, it's fascinating in the sense of just like, whoa, you're like legalizing insider trading right now, right? So like how does that work, right? And sometimes, let me take a better example of this. Actually, a company within our own portfolio. There's a company called Forage, which is a payment processor for food stamps. So how that works is like if anyone has grown up food secure in America, and some of my family have, then the government generally helps give you a debit card, which you can use at some certain grocery stores to pay for groceries. But the problem with that is that in cities like Detroit, they're food deserts. You have to actually travel sometimes like an hour to actually find a grocery store. So they're allowing people to use like DoorDash, Instacart, et cetera, to use food stamps to get delivery, right? But the problem with that is it's a federally regulated payment that has to go through a ton of compliance. So they had to spend 18 months getting 2 senators to sponsor a bill that allowed them to actually run payment processing on their food stamps. Now, the reason why I thought this is a awesome business was like it was going to be binary. Either like they never make it work and it's a dead zero, or they figure it out and like they're the only company with like a running head start to ever do this kind of thing. And now they're crushing it. By the way, are we open to Q&A right now? I see yeah,
I was going to say, I saw some hands. We're going to save a little bit of time at the end for some questions. Yeah, actually to that, and maybe we, to move things forward, do you want to ask some questions about like foreign founders in particular?
Yeah. So I definitely know from experience that VC sometimes have hesitations about investing in foreign founders. Where do you think they're missing a great opportunity, and where do you think some of their skepticism or hesitancy might have some sort of basis?
Yeah, this is a really great topic. So related to sort of structure, and then let's talk about foreign. So a very easy thing for everyone to know here is that if you're going to be raising capital in the, sorry, my best friend's calling me, I'm going to say no. So not my wife, but my other best friend, by the way, so don't tell B. If you're raising capital in the United States, let's say you're from Korea, make sure that you have a Delaware C corporation that you set up, because that's the only way that U.S. venture capitalists can actually give you money. There's a lot of tax advantages for U.S. VC. I'm not going to get into them. And most cannot in the United States invest in entities outside the U.S. We can. We can do Singapore. We can do Delaware. I might look at Korea as well. All right. So
short plug, our firm has developed a system working with a platform to help companies that are international flip to a U.S. parent company really efficiently with clean documentation. So if that's something you need, please reach out to us.
I do recommend as well, not just plugging Venturous here, but working with a law firm on this one. You can use something like Stripe Atlas or other kinds of platforms too, but there are certain things you do not want to fuck up. Because like if this is done poorly, so many people can get into trouble. Right. So like having just like some legal experts on your side, and it's not going to cost you that much working with Venturous, by the way, on this thing. Wait, what was the question again?
What are they missing?
Oh, what are they missing?
And
yeah,
what are they right about?
Okay. I'm just going to name it. Silicon Valley is full of people who are like amazing at sales, right? Like they just like sound smart. They sound really, really good. You know, they're charismatic, right? And the problem sometimes is just simple systemic bias, which is like, oh, English is not your first language. You know, like if you're in a room full of like 10 dudes all wearing Patagonia vests, you know, and they're like trying to think of
all
like,
birds.
Yeah, should we go down to like a Madeira bar afterwards and grab a drink, you know, at the Rosewood? Like, do I want to hang out with this person who barely speaks English? I mean, that's a little unfair, but like, that's I think a very big miss, which is like simple bias of just like, you know, they're not good at communicating English just yet. So I struggled with this one a little bit. On the one hand, it does have meaning in terms of your subsequent fundraise to be able to tell your story. But on the other hand, too, like I mean, why should you be judged on that? I think what I'm kind of talking about is starting to get a little bit better, because I think the diversity of funders on our side of the table is getting better. For example, if you're from Korea, there's like 20 general partners who are Korean American or Korean right now. And like starting with them, and then, you know, and being a little selfish here, like starting with me, if we like, if give us a chance to get you the first check, then like there's ways that your VC can help you start to socialize to other non-Korean general partners to start to tell that story. So there's like no, like do that with angels. You know, you can find sort of allies who kind of understand the cultural context, help you coach and get practice and then get better. But it's a real thing. And I hate it, right? I don't really know how to solve it, except like, you know, let's keep investing in just people who have the merit and try to coach them and eventually hope that their business will speak for itself. Just like that Series D thing where like you just show them a spreadsheet. It's like, do you like money? It's like, who cares if I don't speak English as a first language?
And eventually, hopefully, you're finding these people that the other VCs are passing on, and your returns are showing that. And that's like a way this moves.
The hard part about the return. So I agree with this. Like, I think that's the thing that makes the evolution of venture better. Returns, though, take forever, right? Like, I assume when we make a deal, it's like maybe 10 to 15 years before the company IPOs or has a serious M&A event. So this is the aspect of venture which is so weird. Like, you're all building companies that with such crazy velocity, using AI to go even faster, but the venture ecosystem does not evolve as quickly as founders, right? So that's always going to be the awkward, like, adolescent child kind of thing that you're going to feel if you're in this spot.
So,
for now.
I mean, this is very, you know, piggybacking on that is like Silicon Valley has this reputation of being very, you know, success is based on who you know. And can you get that warm introduction? And I wonder if you have a perspective on whether that's still the case, whether that's changed, and then also like to connect it to, you know, a lot of folks in this room. If you are not in that network at all, like what's your first move?
Yeah. Strong as ever. Warm introductions matter more than ever, I'd say. We do look at deals cold, all of them very seriously with our fund. And there are certain funds that do that, but most do not. So, and if you think about it, it's a great laziness thing, right? It's just like if someone's vouching for this person, and this venture is an infinite game, which is like we're constantly referring deals to each other as venture capitalists. Like when someone vouches for someone else that I respect, like you have to take that a little bit more seriously given the relationship, right? So I can see why people never take a cold introduction, because like it's just lazier and easier to just focus on the warm introductions, right? So how do you cold start that? I guess I can think of just maybe 2 or 3 things. The first would be, let's say you do get your first Silicon Valley investor. It could be an angel. It could be a VC. Leaning very hard on that person to ask for more introductions so that they can vouch for you to get the flywheel started is very important. As you close those new deals, lean hard into them to get more introductions and so forth. We actually had to do a version of this at Hustle Fund back in 2017. It's just like cascading introductions as we try to ask for more and more and more. It's part 1. Part 2 are things like this. So one of the properties of Silicon Valley that's unique, and I hope that everyone in this room is understanding this, is that the quality of attendees at events, just generally on any given night, at events like this, anywhere in San Francisco, there's 10 events each night, is extraordinarily high. Like great founders and great funders come to events all the time. I see one great angel investor right there, right? I see some other VCs here too that I've done some business with here as well. So like, if you go to the events and put in the time, you can start to build those connections. And one of the best referrals that a VC can get is when my founder is referring another founder. Great founders tend to be friends with other great founders. And I actually take them to be the most interesting warm introductions is when it comes from a founder. And that might be a little bit easier to get an introduction to than that's trying to network in a room full of VCs who are just like, you know, not into that kind of thing.
And the founder journey is lonely, right? It is so important for you to have other founders that you can talk with, that you can connect with, you can empathize about your situation. Because the person that's working at one of the main companies, they can't relate to your struggles most of the time.
Yeah. The other thing too is just like San Francisco is small. It's 7 miles wide, 7 miles deep or whatever. It's so very tiny, 7 by 7, right? 800,000-ish people, tiny town. So you start to run into people a lot. If you go to events pretty consistently, like 1 or 2 times a week, things like this, you're going to start to find those connections come together much faster than you think. So that's probably my best advice for cold starting, things like this.
And it's a huge benefit for being located in this area, which a lot of amazing founders that are not located here, they come here for a month and they hustle for a month, or they figure out how they can stay here for a little while to do what you guys, if you're located here, have access to all the time.
Quick shout out, by the way. Is anyone here part of the Asananam Foundation network? Like Maru 180? Okay, great. I saw some people. Check out Asananam Foundation. They're the Chung family from Hyundai. They opened up a new house in Burlingame. Korean founders can stay there for up to 6 weeks for free through an application. So it's a really neat way of getting like a landing zone as you try to cold start a little bit of your network here too. Shout out to the Chung family. They're super cool.
So we can leave time for Q&A, maybe one more question if you've got one, and then we'll turn it over to folks to...
Okay. I guess I have the question, which is coming from a culture, and my culture, my parents were Indian, I'm from India, I'm ethnically Indian, although I was raised here. Cultures that value humility. There's kind of like almost, it's almost the opposite of what you're supposed to present as a founder, bragging about your company and all of these things. Now, you've talked a little bit about, people that are conceited and don't think they have any faults. But I think a lot of times immigrants, people of color, women, mission-driven founders, they err on the other side of not wanting to brag too much or not wanting to seem too big for their britches, or the tallest flower gets cut, whatever phrase that is. I just want to get your thoughts about that.
So it's interesting because when I look at our portfolio of 680 companies over the last 9 years, I'd say that the immigrants and women are outperforming the other populations. There's something about, coming into an industry like this, which is like a fish tank of piranhas, basically, and saying like, look, I crossed an ocean to be here, or yes, I realize it's a male-dominated environment, but I don't care. It almost self-selects in some ways for people who I think are a little bit grittier about accepting this journey. And so maybe you don't need to brag about yourself, but if you're passionate about the idea, focus on that, right? Like it's a little bit easier sometimes. Like examples, like maybe I don't want to come off like an asshole and just like talk about why I'm so awesome, but it's very easy for me to start bragging about my son or daughter because like I'm very passionate about them, like everything that they do. I think they're fascinating, and maybe your equivalent of that is just like, I just need to tell you like what this company I'm building is all about, and that kind of authentic emotion, I think, translates very, very well. And you can maybe have an easier time bragging about this. I think there's like I know we have to do open Q&A here. I'll end with this one story, which is I grew up near just like Arvinda, where you grew up, like a big community of Mormon people. And so if you're familiar with
Salt Lake City for me.
Yeah.
FYI.
So in Detroit, there's a pocket of Mormons that I was a part of. So the interesting thing about the Mormon church is that the boys go on a mission for 2 years right after high school. So after year one, I actually reconnected with some of them like during a holiday or something. And I was like, okay, dude, give it to me straight. This must be fucking terrible, right? You're going like to Ecuador and trying to convince people to join the Mormon church, and 99.9% of people are like, go fuck yourself, right? And their response stuck with me and changed my entire perspective on fundraising, sales, and actually life. They said, this is the greatest experience I've ever had. And when I asked them why, they said, it's because like, look, even if most people say no, if I can in this journey like convert one person to join me in the church, I think I'm actually saving them, right? They absolutely believed in their product. They thought that they were in the business of selling good news in their view, and they were, right? So you founders out there are not trying to save my soul, maybe, but you're also in the business of selling good news, right? It's what you're building that you think this planet needs, right? Or humanity needs. So if you just remind yourself about like, my job today is to share good news, then I think everything else sort of comes together in terms of the emotion, how you pitch, how you can sort of get that great level of like self-confidence, but not be too arrogant.
I love that. High conviction.
Thank you, Eric. Awesome. We'll open up to some questions. Just so you know, we're recording, so I'm going to have people say their questions into the microphone so that people who watch this after the fact can actually hear what the questions were.
If it's okay, actually 2 questions. Is that okay? So question number one, prediction markets. So you mentioned you have concerns with this model. I would love to hear more about what the concerns are and how they're being addressed well or not well. That's question number one. Question number two, somewhat related. You mentioned a company in your portfolio that is essentially regulatory arbitrage, passing the law, etc. So I would love to get your perspective on startups which are betting on regulatory arbitrage. And one thing I should say, not many investors understand this type of opportunity. So on one hand, how do you evaluate regulatory arbitrage opportunity? On the other hand, what would be your advice to somebody whose startup actually is betting on regulatory arbitrage?
I'll start with that second one, the question around regulatory arbitrage. How do you make bets in this space? And I guess my answer is I try not to. So the case of Forage, the food stamp company that I just shared, they were the right bet. But it wasn't because I was like, oh yeah, this team's going to figure it out within like 1 year or 2 years or something. It was luck. I mean, getting like any senator to pick up the phone or read your email is like, it takes such insane lobbying effort and a lot of serendipity, I think, to get there. And I've actually been on the other side of regulatory problems too. So like, for example, we had this one company that was doing $80 million a year, providing free birth control to women in the United States. And they got that through Medicare covering it. And then when the Trump administration in the first term came in, they cut it. And then the business died. They're planning to IPO in 6 months. And then it's gone overnight, right? So like, my lesson there was like, I try not to. But what I focus on is just like the missionary founder. Like if someone just seems like absolutely tenacious and trying to solve a problem, and it could still be in a regulatory space, I guess, then taking a bet on that team is really good. Like venture mathematics is very interesting in that it's all power law driven. So what this means is like, even in my portfolio of 250 companies per fund, we invest in a lot of companies per fund. I only need 3 to work out in a big way. Like 3 100x outcomes, which is not easy either, right? If I get 3, then I can get a 3x, 4x, 5x fund. And if all the rest of the 247 companies fail, it's actually okay. So that's kind of like what a VC is also thinking. Is like sometimes like something that's absolutely binary is the best bet of like, it's either going to completely flame out into nothing, we lose all of our money, or this is going to be like a generational multi-billion-dollar outcome. And those are like some of the most exciting bets. And you do find that in actually heavily regulatory risky spaces in some cases. But I don't really try to seek them. The founders sometimes just bring it to me. And related to your question on prediction marketplaces, the reason why I don't like them is actually not from the business model. I actually think the business model is very clever, right? It's almost like a giant online casino doing prop bets. Whenever I go to Vegas, and this is usually after my kids have gone to sleep, I'll go to the MGM Grand Sports Betting Lounge. They have these really great chairs, and then they'll give me a bunch of beers, and then I'll just make bets of just like, oh yeah, like LeBron is going to score 22 points by the third quarter, and then like I just like drink and then just make bets, right? So prediction marketplaces are a lot like that, except you're expanding that beyond sport to everything, and that's the problem I have. It's not that you can't make a ton of money or that's a bad business model. I just don't think society needs to take bets on everything. And in addition to that too, I really, really worry about the consequences of consummating bets. Like, for example, if I put $100 bet that Michael's going to break his leg tonight, maybe I'll be motivated to break his leg, right? So I can get my $100.
Who isn't really? Who
right?
isn't, Michael?
It's just like, it's like a very negative kind of observer effect kind of, I don't know. It's just, for me, it's something that doesn't sit right with me. So we choose not to invest in it. That's the only reason. But I respect everyone that is building whatever company that they believe that that should be built.
All right. Who else has a question? Okay.
I see a question over here too.
Go for it. Get you next.
Hi. Thank you. Good to see you too. Hi. I actually have 2 questions that are somewhat related. What advice would you give to founders who are kind of misfits, don't have Ivy League degree, don't have impressive background, but they can get shit done? So what would you advise them? For example, everybody's like, get an advisor who has a Stanford degree or who has millions of years of experience in that exact field. Or since we all have limited time and energy, really focus on get that revenue, get those users. Kind of what do you think about that? And the second question is, so we are in the AI bubble right now, and everybody's building AI infrastructure, AI agents, and it's all great and it's really needed. But how about startups who are building something that has to do with human connection, with education, with children? Like, how do investors view those type of ventures that might be not super hot right now, but I think in the future, human connection will be even way more valued than it was before AI?
Yeah, great question. So on the first one related to...
Can I pause for a sec?
Oh, sure.
Can we ask people to tell who they are and what they're working on too?
Yeah, name and company if you don't mind.
Nana Learning Lawn, working on child-driven learning, matching families with inspiring grown-ups so kids can learn based on their interests, real-life skills from inspiring adults.
Awesome, thank you. Actually, so on the first part of your question around like, let's say you're not like a classically pedigreed Silicon Valley person, but you can actually take that in extreme ways. Like, let's say you're not a white or Asian man who went to Stanford, who worked at Google or Meta, who has a collection of Patagonia vests. You know, like, that's most people in this room, I guess. So like, this is actually where I think Silicon Valley is starting to improve. Like 15 years ago, or maybe 20 years ago when I started my career in Silicon Valley, that stuff seemed to matter more for me. Like perhaps it helped me get more of my foot in my door because I am kind of one of those guys. But now I think people are judged much better on what they can do. So, and here's the reason why. It's just, you know, with all these AI tools that we're just discussing, you can actually come to a pitch showing like, here's the product I built. Why don't you try it? By the way, like 1,000 people already signed up and are using it as well. You know, so like then it starts to be less of a focus on like, well, did you graduate first at Stanford or second? You know, like it's versus like just like, you know, I'm actually building stuff, right? So that's improving. And in fact, there are like funds have done extraordinarily well that specifically focus on things like college dropouts. Like one of my favorite funds in the world is 1517, run by Daniel Struchtman. She only invests in college dropouts. Now, I'm going to tell my kids to go to college, as I think it's fun and it helps you develop. But like, I really respect what she's doing, and her returns are ridiculous, better than mine. All right, so I think like there's more and more kind of diversity of thought on that kind of profile that you're just mentioning.
Can I add one thing, which is the advisor that adds like gloss or whatever? VCs know that an advisor is generally not that involved. You got to make sure they're making some intros, actually strategic. Please don't sign on an advisor, give them a bunch of shares just to have their name on your pitch deck. Please don't do that.
It won't do anything. And I generally ignore it too. I just assume they do nothing. And then with regard to your company and also the general question around like, well, what if I want to focus on human connectivity versus like AI infrastructure and all that stuff? I would say it's all related to AI right now. A growing thesis that I'm starting to notice is like, if there's a crap ton of AI slop out there, like on social media that we're being inundated with, like every VC fund is now like a media company, including Hustle Fund, then I think it's starting to create more thirst for actual human connection. So events like this are very important because like, sure, we could do this on Zoom, but why? Right? Like you're going to lose out on like the stuff that happens before and after. That's actually the not hearing that. This is the boring part. Okay. Like the really interesting part's going to happen like when we're eating Burmese food outside and we actually have real conversations with each other. That's actually the real thing. So platforms like yours, I think are going to have a lot of meaning in this area. And maybe not every VC gets it yet, but rapidly, I think we're kind of moving towards your worldview.
Awesome. Yeah, we had one over here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pian Pian. I'm the founder of a startup called Emotions AI. We're actually bringing more human connections, so using AI to improve human connections and conversations with providing real-time guidance, incorporating emotional intelligence and sociology. My question is like, besides looking at mission-driven founders, like what are the things that you're looking at, and how important nowadays, like tractions and growth among everything else? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pian Pian.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah. So there's 5 things that I look at when it comes to assessing a deal: team, problem, solution, market, and traction. I'll go through each one really quick. Team is like 60 to 70% of the decision usually. It's do I think this is a team with the relevant skills to solve the given problem? if they're co-founders, do they have a history of shipping together before this company? Because co-founder breakup is a very huge risk at the early stages as a pre-seed investor. It kills about 20% of our companies, I'd say. So that's team. Problem is not just like a great problem statement. I want to understand the obsession behind it. If like Arvind is pitching me like we need Uber for children or something like that, which I really would love, then that sounds cool and I can relate to that. But it's just like, and then she follows up and says, "Oh, I've talked to like 1,000 families from all socioeconomic backgrounds and diversity of ethnicities. Like, here's like kind of like the populations that I think would immediately kind of go after this kind of thing, and here's why the other populations will closely follow suit." Like those it's almost like a McKinsey case study of just like what was like the thinking and time that you put in to validate the problem. It's a very important one for me. Solution is generally the product or platform you've created. I'd like to understand like what is your MVP and how you grow from there, just to understand the logic. Market has to be big. So it has to be measured in the billions of dollars in venture, because I have a very simple mathematical equation. At the post-money valuation that I invest in your company, can I 100x from there? So like if I invest in Jeffrey's business at $1 million valuation, but I think he can get to a $100 million exit, that returns the fund for me, right? Like I need to get the venture mathematics to work. If it's 10 million, then he has to make the case that he can get to $1 billion. If it's 100 million, then it starts to get really, really difficult. So that's market and traction. It's not important for me that you have a lot of traction. It's nice if you do. If it's like a signed pilot or a couple of early users, that's all neat. But I generally like to understand like what are the distribution channels that you're going to leverage to sell this thing or get into users' hands. Like at least strong opinion is loosely held. And in this era where AI is abstracting away the need for people to like hire developers very early to like build good products, like we can pretty much all build good products now, even with like Claude Cowork through some prompts. I actually would prefer to work with a founder who is as good, if not slightly better, at sales and marketing than they are at building a good product. Right, so team, problem, solution, market, and traction. And if you can nail those 5 things, it could just be 5 slides in a deck or a memo with 5 paragraphs, then I think that's a pretty complete package for a pre-seed pitch.
I'm going to cheat, even though it's not my Q&A, and ask, because I ask this all the time. What do you think about solo founders?
Yeah, there's a heavy bias against them in our industry, but it's also starting to change pretty rapidly because there are actually really good cases of many solo founders doing quite well. I got no problem with it. The only thing is, I was a solo founder for my first company for 9 years. Actually, I was going to ask who's a solo founder. You don't need to raise your hand now. The thing that I really recall about that experience was how lonely it was. So like, it's just an emotional toll being a founder, but it just is almost like double or triple that when you're the solo founder because you have no one else to talk to that truly understands you. And I really mean that. I mean, like, you could be married to the best person in the world, like I am. Arvind, tell that to my wife later.
I will report back.
Yeah, okay, cool. Tell her I said that. It's on recording.
This is recorded.
Yeah, be the best. They're still not going to understand you when it comes to being a founder, right? Like they could even be like a pretty senior tech leader or something like that, but it's nowhere close to the emotional toll that you have to carry every day. So I like co-founders only, if anything, for the emotional support. Knowing that you can share the burden with someone who has as much in it as you do is something that's quite comforting. So I would never start another company by myself again. That said, my first company ended up fine. It just took, a lot out of me.
And I'm also going to put a plug out that like women who think they need to get like a male co-founder just to have it, it's worse than the advisor situation, guys. The investors will be able to tell if this is a figurehead. And you need to also convince them that you work well as a team because, as Eric mentioned, founder disputes are maybe the worse than a failure to meet product market fit, right? Because that often a company pivots a bunch of times and then lands on something. But if you have a founder dispute and the company doesn't have money, it's just poof, all the money is gone.
Yeah, so solo founder is better than shitty founder or figurehead founder for sure. And like anything in life, things compound. Like if Michael and I are just like slightly annoyed at like a stylistic thing, like maybe I hate like his emojis and his text messages or something now.
Me too.
Like 9 years from now, when like that stuff actually tends to compound into weird manifestations of resentment and things like that. It's a silly example, but like I see it all the time. There's one company in our portfolio right now we're dealing with where it's doing so good, but the one co-founder has figured out with the board how to fire the other co-founder behind its back. And now like they're just like emailing me saying like, who's your best litigator that you know? Okay, because I'm a good person, I did recommend a litigator because I care about this human being, but it's almost like fighting against myself at this point. Because like if this guy sues and takes down this company, which could have been like a really good performer for our fund, then that sucks, right? And I kind of wish it was just like there must have been something they could have done years ago to have like improved like this situation so this would not have happened in like a sudden board meeting, firing, backstabbing situation, just like that show Succession. It's like just like that. And now I'm like caught in the middle of this thing. And I'm not going to talk to Arvind or Michael about it because they don't do that kind of work.
But
They're
we
deal
know the
makers.
people who do.
We know people
the
who do.
people who
They
do.
will refer
We know
out
the
to good
best.
people, but you want to work with them on the deals.
And I also want to plug YC has like coaching resources online, founder, co-founder coaching. I really think time spent with your co-founder, if you have one, weekly connecting, clear communication is like such time well spent.
So, hey, we only have Eric for a short period of time tonight. I know people are starting to get hungry. So if there's one more question, we can do that. And then
Okay, we're
so
gonna
you saw him
We're
first.
gonna
Sorry.
do two. We're gonna do two.
All right. Hi, I'm Benjamin. I work in the robotics physical AI space. I run a company called SF Playground. My question is, coming from a founder or anyone that might be looking into getting capital from VCs, what are some red flags or indicators that you should stay away from a certain VC, or maybe that you shouldn't get funding at all and you should continue to maybe gain traction?
So red flags that
question.
founders should look out for a potential VC is what you're saying? Yeah, that's a great question. Now, not everyone will always have the privilege of being able to select their VCs, but if you are lucky or do your process well, maybe you can. All right, I'll tell you one red flag. This happened to a founder the other night. She was like, okay, this guy asked me to pitch him at 11 o'clock at the hotel lobby of this hotel. And I was like, run the fuck away. This guy's an idiot, right? Like, clearly there's an agenda there. You should not be taking a meeting, especially if you're a woman, in a hotel at that hour of the day. So, creepy dude. And there's a lot of creepy men who take advantage of this asymmetric power dynamic sometime. Not me, B. I don't take advantage of that. You know me. I'm going to be home right after this. I'm not going to. No, I'm not going to. And the reason why is there's already a number of... This is the thing that's kind of fucked up about VC. Is like, by doing that, it actually hurts a number of other founders who have taken money from that firm that I've already invested in. That guy's an asshole. But I do business with some other people in that firm as well. So this is all for like the memoir posthumously, right? When I'm like done giving a fuck. Of just like, okay, Michael and Aravinda on March 23rd, 2000, or whatever, 25th. Like,
I guess we're going to feature prominently in
Yeah.
Eric's burn book.
I know so much about you guys. It's great. But we're like brothers and sisters now. So that inappropriate behavior, I have no tolerance because you have to actually live for 10 years with this person or 15 years. You know, that's a long time of spending your life with someone like that. The other one, though, is just like VCs are very good about presenting themselves and sounding so nice and so helpful before they write the check. And that's when you see the true VC after they've taken your money, right? So what you got to do is back channel all the time with your VCs. Not the recommendations they say like, oh, talk to my founder, Jeffrey, right? Like Jeffrey's going to probably say nice things about me because we got history. But like, try to find like the other people like on LinkedIn or something. It's like, oh, I saw you're connected to VC Aravinda. Like, can I talk to you for 5 minutes? VC founders are really good in Silicon Valley about taking the phone call for back channeling. And you only need to ask 2 questions. The first is like, I learned this, by the way, from this guy named Scott Cook, who's the founder of Intuit. Like when I was working at Intuit 21 years ago, he gave this talk and I was like, this guy's a genius. His reference calls are only 5 minutes. He asks 2 questions. He says, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being perfect, how would you rate Eric, right, as a VC? And then what he does is he says, I put down the phone and then I walk away as they talk. Most people will say 8, 9. Some will even say 10. Let's say that he says 9. Then Scott says, well, what would get him to a 10? And that's a back-footed question. Most people are not prepared for that. And they have to think really hard about like, well, what's the gap here, right? If someone says 10, then you say, what would get them to 11? Right? Because no one's perfect, right? So if you do a couple of those, like 2 or 3, you start to notice a pattern. Generally, a call is very short and easy if it's just like a no problem. But when you sense like a awkward pause or like a weird inflection in the voice, then you need to sniff that, and that could be kind of bad, right? So the most important question here, by the way, in this situation is I get like when I proposed to my wife, I didn't say, "Will you marry me?" B. I said, "Will you grow old with me?" B. And she said yes. And so, but that's like the question you got to ask is like, do I want to grow old with this person, right? And sometimes you don't even have to name it. It's just like Jeffrey says all the right things, like nothing red flag about him, but there's something a little bit off. I can't name. Maybe it's the fact that I always see you in like black shirts. Like, do you have any other wardrobe? Something bothers me a little bit. I love Jeffrey. You don't have to name it. Sometimes you just gotta trust your gut.
Can I also share a factoid, which is it is easier to divorce your spouse than it is to get somebody bad off your cap table. Guys, practice safe cap table. Okay? Oppo research on your investors, like really vet the people coming onto your company. It's your baby. And I've seen bad actors tank an otherwise really possibly very successful company.
100%. I have 170 investors across 4 funds. Only 2 people are 90% of my problems. They're just terrible people. And I should have vetted them better. So don't do that. There's one more question.
Check the memoir. Yeah. You're going to find out who. All right, we'll go to you, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. My name is Dave Lee. I'm the founder of a company called NestlePay, which is a stablecoin payment for WhatsApp. Eric, I am from outside this country. I just moved into San Francisco 2 months ago. And I want to echo what you just said about something in the water. I think there's something in the air. There's something in the people. The 2 months I'm here, it really is made a difference. The question I have for you is actually very specific. WhatsApp is owned by Facebook. Why you think there hasn't been a payment system on WhatsApp? Because I use WeChat. WeChat has WeChat Pay. Some other messaging systems has payment system as well. So that's my question. Thank you.
I know a little bit about this from about 12 or 14 years ago when I was working at Meta. So they were actively trying to kill payments because they want to eventually own the payment layer on WhatsApp. But what I think has happened, they had some interesting cases with like Libra, DM, like some of the stablecoin platforms that they were trying to create. At other times, they wanted to do like wallet partnerships with PayPal. They brought in David Marcus from PayPal to sort of run like some sort of interesting payment project there. But then Zuck got distracted by the metaverse, and then he got distracted now by
how's that going?
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Great. Super awesome. Go get your, what are they called again? I forgot. Those, whatever VR, Oculus or whatever it is now. Meta VR. Anyway, that was a fun, like, tens of billions of dollars that went down the toilet. So I do know that they saw the opportunity, and I actually have seen pitch decks by product managers talking about the payment opportunity as well. But nothing happened because I think they realigned the resources against other things. I think that's it. And I think the eye is off the ball for now. The problem with Meta, though, does anyone here work for Meta? The problem with Meta is that they're not a friendly developer partner, right? Like if they notice something is working on their platform, they will do something. So like sometimes it can work into your favor. Maybe you scale to like something really crazy and they're like, we have to buy Dave's company now for $2 billion, right? So wonderful, right? That's sort of like the Manus story a little bit. They kind of were like, we need to play an AI that's sort of like OpenClaw-esque before OpenClaw, I guess. And then they went after Manus, which by the way has a fascinating story. I'm not sure if you saw like the Chinese government crackdown on Manus now. The founders, it's looking pretty ugly. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's not a bad time, I think, to be creating like an AI native, or sorry, a WhatsApp native platform. But I'd just be really careful about not declaring yourself until you have a serious critical mass. And then, so that they have to actually negotiate with you versus like, be strong-fisted and shutting you down because they are really protective about their ecosystem.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. Let's give it up for Eric. Thank you for joining us
Thank you,
tonight.
guys.
Thank all of you for
Thank
coming
you.
out.